Lava Man is alongside in second. Ace Blue's actually back into the bid. He's only a length and a half from the front. Super Frolic is next, and Lava Man and Magnum come to the final furlong, and Magnum has lost the lead to Lava Man. Lava Man is ahead in front. Magnum is battling on bravely and coming back. Ace Blue's only a length from Lava Man. Lava Man has the lead. He's put away Magnum, but Ace Blue is charging. Lava Man, Ace Blue, right together!
All right, welcome back. This is the Racing Rundown podcast. We're back for our first interview in probably 2 months. Today we're going to have two-time Kentucky Derby winning trainer Doug O'Neill on the show today. How you doing today, Doug?
I'm doing great, Jack. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. First thing I want to ask you is, how did you get your start in horse racing?
I got my start in horse racing walking hots for Jude Feld right out of high school in 1986.
Did you, when you first started being around horses, did you ever intend to become a trainer, or was that something that you never really, not, I don't want to say didn't think was going to happen, but wasn't something that you thought was going to be your number one thing? Or was being a trainer always going to be your number one thing?
It was a dream. I mean, I had gone to the races, from about sixth grade. I didn't know if I missed a weekend, from sixth grade through graduating from high school. But so, I did kind of look at trainers as, they were my Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, if you will. So it was a dream. And but being a first generation guy, I didn't have any family in it. So got my feet wet, fell in love with it, and got real lucky.
Do you remember your first winner?
A horse named Frank Prince up at Bay Meadows.
What was that like to get your first professional win as a trainer?
It's unreal, absolutely unreal. If I would have got hit by a bus that night, I would have lived my dream. So that's kind of was the approach I took. I couldn't believe that I was, the head trainer of a horse that just won a race. It was pretty awesome, a great feeling.
When did you first start to think that, you were going to get higher up in the training world and not just be, the every other average trainer?
I don't know. I think most of the men and women in horse racing, you do it just because you love it. So I don't think you ever really get to a point where you think, am I going to get the opportunity to have better horses or not? Or, one horse, a horse named Skyjack, was probably the horse that I can think of right now that gave me the confidence that if my team and I had a horse with a lot of quality, that we could compete with the bigger names. Because you do get, you get caught up in that, how can I compete with that barn? They get such great horses and they're great trainers and great, great. And then you realize as you get longer in the tooth that it's really the horses that are great. And, your passion and love and care and all that helps them reach their great potential. So I'd say Skyjack kind of gave me the confidence that I needed.
Now, obviously, you can't talk to Doug O'Neill without asking him about Lava Man. Before we talk about him, I want to ask you a question. Just from people who encounter you at the track, how often do you get asked about Lava Man?
Oh, God. I would say people that know the business, 5 times a week, maybe sometimes more. And then, friends and family and just guests of the barn that don't know a lot about the business. It's usually the name I bring up and introduce them to the great Lava Man, because he just sharing the space with him without anyone saying anything, you realize you're among an amazing horse. So he's just such a godsend, and what a privilege it was to train him, and what a privilege it is to have him at the barn every day.
Do you have any signature race from Lava Man's career where, that's the one out of all the races that he's won that you remember the most, or are they all equally special?
Well, I think the the Hollywood Gold Cup, when actually I was with my wife and my mom. My mom had just turned 70, and we were on a trip in Ireland. The CTBA had offered some horseman trip to Ireland, and we got a chance to go to a bunch of different yards there in Ireland, and we had the opportunity to go to the Irish Derby as well. So that particular trip, Lava Man was running back home, which I debated over. I kind of hated missing that, but we were able to find a little pub at the hotel we were staying at that showed the race, and then ironically ESPN was there at our hotel because they were filming the Irish Derby the next day. So it was such a crazy event, and then to watch him win was just incredible. So I would say that one stood out, but he had so many amazing races that he every time you let him over there, he just gave you 100%, and it was just with tons of class.
How unique of an experience is it that you get to see Lava Man every time you go to your barn, because that's not usually the case with trainers and some of their ex-great racehorses?
I know it's a real gift and a blessing, and something that I never thought of, and got to give a lot of love to Sabas Rivera, one of my main assistants, and he's a tremendous horseman, and he was extremely instrumental in the time and the horsemanship of converting Lava Man from the great competitive racehorse to the amazing companion outriding coach, lead pony that he is now. So it's when we retired him, it was a happy and a sad moment, and never really could have dreamed that he was going to be our main equine coach there at the barn every day. So that really, I might have retired him sooner if I could have realized that, because he's just a one-of-a-kind, unique horse.
What was your reaction when you got the news that he was inducted into the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, that was that was a pretty special moment, and one that you to know that people that get a chance to walk through the Hall of Fame will have an opportunity to see his plaque and read a little bit about him. Years after I'm gone, is a real cool feeling and special feeling. So that was quite an honor when he got inducted, and I think he's very deserving of that amazing privilege to be in there.
I want to backtrack a couple of years, back to 2005, your first Breeders' Cup win. Before I ask you about that, J. Paul Reddam has been a big part of your career. What has he meant to you as a trainer?
J. Paul, he is he's like a mentor, older brother, father. He's not old enough to be my father, I guess, but he's just an amazing, hard-working man, and he's from Windsor, Canada, right across the border from Detroit, Michigan, where I'm from. So as we got to know each other, realized we both were kind of raised and loving the Detroit teams and stuff, and he's just been aside from his passion for his work and running a huge business, he absolutely is all in with horse racing. He just loves it, and so it's just been a great mentor for me that way. That we love the sport and want to do right by the horse, and just it's a very time consuming sport, but I think just seeing a successful businessman like Jay Paul enjoy every bit of it, it makes you realize that the time you put in, it's worth every minute of it, because it's just such a pleasure every time you watch your horses train and compete. It's awesome.
Stevie Wonderboy was your first Breeders' Cup winner in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. What's it like to get a win in a race like that?
Well, that was double special, because that was for the late Merv Griffin, who's was entertainment icon, if you will, the creator of Wheel of Fortune and many other things. But that was pretty awesome. That was my brother Dennis's, one of his first selections. He picked him out of a 2-year-old training sale, and got to see his ability as a equine scout. And then late Garrett Gomez, who was just a phenomenal jockey and a phenomenal human, who unfortunately left us all way too soon. But that was a pretty awesome win. And my wife Lynette and I were there, and we had just had our son. So just we were all there in New York, and as crazy and as exciting as New York is, it was even crazier and more exciting that night. So it was an unbelievable memory that I'll never forget.
Do you remember your first Kentucky Derby, when the first time you trained a horse that ran in the race?
I don't. I actually saddled a horse for the late, and I'm butchering his first name. I always just called him Mr. Cho, but he had a horse named National Lore, who he was like a grade 1 place maiden. And I was stable right next to Mr. Cho at Hollywood Park, and he asked me if I'd go back and help him out with National Lore and Kentucky Derby, and of course I will. So I saddled him for him, which was really cool. And then of my own, God, it would have had to have been Mr. Redham's. I'd be lying if I told you what year, what horse, but we had some outsiders there in the 2008, 2009, I believe.
I'm trying to say it might have even been a Great Hunter.
That sounds right. Which was that, 2009 maybe?
2007 it said.
2007, okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. So, the one thing, Paul and Zilla Redham, they love their horses, and they'll do everything they can to have them in their best health. And when they're doing really well, they will definitely take chances, and they'll run them, which sometimes seems a little bit over their head at times. But they've won a lot of big races. We've won a lot of big races, just having confidence and faith in their horses, and taking chances, and the horses jumping up and exceeding their maybe the expectations of others.
When did you first realize that I'll Have Another was going to be something special?
He showed talent. I think he won his first time out, so that was anytime you win a street maiden in Southern California as a 2-year-old, those races are often tough. But I think off the layoff, winning the Bob Lewis was a real wow, and he had worked really well going into it, but it's just such a hard task to win a 2-turn graded race off a long layoff. So that was definitely a sign that, this horse is a special horse. And then, he started rattling off win after win, and we had just gotten to know Mario a little bit at that time, and he was wowed by him every time he got on him, and which gave us extra confidence as well. So I'd probably say the Bob Lewis is the race that showed me that he was a special horse.
How impressed were you with the ride that Mario put on him in that Kentucky Derby? my friend Gary Stevens on NBC described it as as a masterful run, one of the best he'd ever seen in the Kentucky Derby. How impressed were you from Mario's perspective, a 25-year-old kid, first time in the Kentucky Derby, all that pressure on him, and he rode I'll Have Another the way he rode him in the Kentucky Derby? How impressive was that?
No, that was because, you're really, for at least a week or so there leading up to it, you're just getting peppered, more Mario than me, with, what are you going to do? How are you handling it? And, it can really get in your head in a negative way. You can start doubting yourself. And, Mario really took advantage of an amazing opportunity. And I think a lot of what kept him calm was just his feeling that he was on a real special horse, which he was. So, that was, I could see if I was a jockey that a race like the Derby would be a very easy race to second guess yourself, and the split second decisions throughout that mile and quarter, you could doubt yourself, and you could really cost your horse some positions there. And Mario never blinked an eye and rode it like it was just a normal race, in which we all know what it is. And it was very, very impressive.
How confident were you in I'll Have Another going into the Preakness?
Oh God, we just after the Derby, you just felt like there wasn't a horse on the planet that could beat him. So that being said, I'd say pretty confident. But Bodemeister, trained by Bob Baffert, we knew he was going to be a tough customer, and he was, and we just needed every bit of that stretch to get it done.
Now, from winning that Preakness, you had to scratch I'll Have Another the day before the Belmont Stakes. What was the disappointment when you guys had to make that decision?
Yeah, it was definitely, it took the air out of you there for a second, but I remember one of the first, if not the first person I called, was a really good buddy of mine back in California named Mark Verge, who's just been a great friend since I moved to California in 6th grade. And the first thing he said was, God, you just got to think about the amazing times that I'll Have Another has given you, and all the amazing experiences that he's given you, and just you got to focus on that. And it snapped me right out of any little weird depression I might have been in for a few seconds. But you felt sorry for yourself, and then once the reality light hit you immediately went into, oh my God, I can't believe I was just part of an amazing run with an amazing horse. And he was 100% sound. It was just the start of a tendon injury, which, where the racehorse tendons aren't easily healed. So we knew it was going to be a long-term thing if we did ever run again. But the fact that he was retiring, 100% sound and didn't have any pain, that also made me feel calm and happy about the situation.
Did you ever think that you would get back to that position with another horse, back to the Derby, and be in a position to win races like that?
I thought so, and I still think so, just because of, as long as J. Paul Redham's in the game, anything is possible, because he's such a successful guy, and he's got a lot of horses, and he puts a lot of time and energy and thought power, into the horses he breeds and buys. So, you're always just a little bit of luck away from being involved in a big race with an owner like J. Paul Redham.
Now, I asked that because you did eventually get back to that position and win another Kentucky Derby with Nyquist. When did Nyquist first really catch your eye as, this is a really special 2-year-old?
pretty much from the first day he was at the barn. He was always so amazingly athletic and just like a Mike Tyson type of thing. No socks, no, just shorts. Put him in the ring, and he's gonna beat you up. He was that type of horse, and I remember when we first started breezing him, he was doing everything like you'd look at your watch like, what in the world? And then Mario started getting on him, and he was like wowed by him. So yeah, it was the first crop of Uncle Mo, and you heard rumblings from around the country too of, man, these Uncle Mo's all look like they can run, and I was like, ooh, I'm sitting on one that acts like he's special too. So, I remember in his debut, Peter Miller had a really hot shot horse that had just run second, I think, first time out in a fast time, and he was coming back, and the race under his belt, he was going to be tough to beat, and here we are with Nyquist, and he got the job done. So he showed he had talent from the word go, but winning the debut against a hard knocking horse that had just run a solid race definitely made me feel like a little bit of luck, we could have fun again.
How impressive was his win in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile? Because he had to come around a bunch of horses, and going down the backside, it looked like that Nyquist was in an impossible position, and he won that Breeders' Cup Juvenile rather handily. How impressed were you in his run there?
Yeah, that was a wacky race, because it did look like he had encountered enough trouble that there's no way he was going to win, but he still was a credible race. That's kind of what was going through my head about midway through the race. But for him to get it done, like you say, in one, without any photo finish being involved, just really showed that didn't matter what distance and no matter what kind of trip, he was just a natural athlete. That speed and stamina, he had it all, and competitiveness, class. I cannot wait for his babies to hit the ground running, and if they're anything like him, that he should continue on with the Uncle Mo brilliance.
Now, Nyquist, you had an added pressure with Nyquist with the champion 2-year-old title. Were you concerned at all, because we all have known the history of, first of all, winners of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and 2-year-old champions in the past 35, 40 years in the Kentucky Derby. Did that at all make you concerned that Nyquist was not going to be able to win the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, because I can see why the precocious, brilliant 2-year-olds don't oftentimes turn into a Mount a Quarter classic, Derby kind of horse. And but he just matured, and credit to Paul and Zilla were so patient with him, and I think we ran him maybe twice, prior to the Derby in his 3-year-old year. So we really tried to space him and really let him develop in the mornings and not do a whole lot in the afternoons before the Derby that year. But it obviously played out perfectly, and then unfortunately he just wasn't one of those. As he got older, wasn't the type of horse that you could run every 2 or 3 weeks, which if you want to win the Triple Crown, that's what you need to do. And as impressive as the Derby race was, he really the Preakness with the off track, and he was a little bit, it was obvious after the race, not so much before the race, but his energy was just a little bit drained from the Derby, and then we just never really got him back to where he was going into the Derby.
It also probably didn't help him that he got gunned in that Preakness. He ran into a very fast pace. Nyquist was a very fast horse. I wish that I had liked Nyquist a lot more when he was running, because looking back on him, Nyquist was the first horse that I really followed when I got into horse racing, and I didn't like him as much then, but looking back at Nyquist now, I love Nyquist, looking back in the past. Question that I want to ask you is, how different is were the two derbies that he ran? Because the first one, or the two derbies that you won, because the first one, you guys were in the position of your horse came into the stretch and you had to gobble up a leader, whereas the second time around, you guys were the leader and someone was trying to gobble you up. How different is that?
Yeah, no, those are two different types of feelings. You're praying for the wire, and then you're with all heaven other, you're praying the wire to stretch it a little bit longer. But they're when you have a lot of confidence and faith in your horse and things just go your way that particular day, it's just hard to explain of whether they're coming from off the pace or they're holding on to that lead. You're just feeling it. You're feeling it that nobody's going to get it by him that day. No one's getting. Oftentimes you're wrong, but when they happen like that, it's just it's an awesome team feeling. When you think of all the men and women on your team that have worked their tail off at the barn, helping the horse get to that place. It's an awesome feeling.
And how special was it? Because you, Mario, and the Redhams, all of you could have won another Kentucky Derby at some other time, but for all three of you to come back and do it again, did that make it any more special than it already was?
I think so. I think it's just such a, it's really the only race I know of. I've been doing this a while that you can tell somebody you're in the business and they're like, have you ever had a horse in the Kentucky Derby? And when you're able to say, oh yeah, I've won it twice, they're like, what? So yeah, there's not any other race that I know of. Even the Breeders' Cup races, the average person doesn't really know much about it. So very, very special to come back 4 years later and win the Derby again. And just, Paul and Zilla have a lot of family too in the Midwest and in Canada there. And both times they had tons of people there at the track, so they got to, celebrate it with a lot of family and friends too, which makes it even more special. So yeah, that was be a long time before I'll ever forget 2012 and 2016 in Louisville.
Now, in between Nyquist and I'll Have Another Nyquist, I should say, you had another horse, Golden Sense. He was a pretty tough horse too. Didn't win as many of the marquee races as the other two did, but a couple Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile wins, Pat O'Brien Stakes winner. How special was Golden Sense?
Man, I think he won the San Diego Derby too, right? I think,
yeah, he did. He did. I forgot about that.
Yeah, he reminded me so much, or I should say Nyquist, because Nyquist came after him. Nyquist reminded me a lot of a Golden Sense. Nyquist just had a little bit more stamina about him than Golden Sense, but Golden Sense was just brilliant from the word go. Won his debut, super impressive. Credit to Glenn Sorgenstein of WC Racing. Kevin Krieger, it's kind of like a Mario story, really, because no one knew a lot of Kevin Krieger, and Glenn gave him the opportunity, and then to win the San Diego Derby with Kevin, and then to try in the Kentucky Derby was a great memory of mine. But he was a wonderful horse, and we're seeing his babies are running really well around the country, Golden Sense. So yeah, he was a real honor to be to have trained him, and he's got some great memories of him for sure.
Now, the last question that I want to ask you, because you do have to get going. I ask this question to all my guests. If you had one moment in the history of horse racing that you could go back and witness firsthand, it could be something in your career. You could go back and see one of your Kentucky Derbies, or see something that you weren't there for, or anything like that. What would it be?
Wow, that's a great question. I would probably, I'd probably say like the Affirmed Aladar. See one of those duels. That just think of what was it, a nose separated those two in all three of the Triple Crown races. But I mean, there's just so many amazing moments. But that one probably jumps out at me the most, just because when I first got involved, Laz Barrera was training at Hollywood Park, and and just being able to rub shoulders, if you will, with the great Laz Barrera and Charles Whittingham and Bobby Frankel, and it was just, as an 18-year-old kid who didn't have family in it, I was basically walking around with legends, and they really are legends. But I think I made them even bigger in my mind because of how much I love the sport.
All right, he's Doug O'Neill once again, two-time Kentucky Derby winning trainer. You got a couple of horses going forward that look like that they could get back to the Breeders' Cup, specifically Pavel, and you've got 2-year-old 4 left. We're rooting for you out here. Good luck with the future, Doug.
You too, Jack. Thanks for having me. You have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
De Oviedos, and they're into the stretch, and Golden Sense is still going strong. Down to the 8th pole, 4 in front. Here comes Golden Ticket, and he's closing the gap up the rail, and then it's Pants on Fire. Golden Sense, a 16th to go. Golden Ticket, Brujo de Oviedos takes 3rd, as Golden Sense goes all the way in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile.